What went wrong has nothing to do with Max Verstappen. What went wrong was to do with the FIA, which is why people are talking about it. They only need one racing lap. Why do you think he's saying that? He knows if they actually follow the rules, the race will be over. What he's actually saying is bend the rules or use the flexibility that the rules give you to let us have a chance at winning. Right, folks, welcome to the zone. And obviously my last video kind of blew up, which I'm super happy about. I'm glad I got to read a ton of opinions from you guys. Yeah, so it turns out a lot of people were happy and a lot of people were not happy. F1 Twitter in full force. That's to be expected. Now, fair enough, I hold my hands up. Maybe wearing the Mercedes hat was a little bit biased. I appreciate you guys pointing that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and change hat. And maybe we can begin again on fresh footing and talk about the 24 hours after the race. Right, now that that's out of the way and we're nice and unbiased, we can begin the video. Okay, so in the past 24 hours, basically what ended up happening, Mercedes have basically lodged 2 protests and complaints that have been thrown out, ignored, turned away, turned down, however you want to talk about it. They have been disallowed. The protest came down to Mercedes claimed that there were 2 breaches of the sporting regulation, namely that which states any car that have lapped the leader will be required to pass the cars on the lead lap and the safety car. And once the last car has passed that leader, the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. I really tried to look at everything objectively. So this isn't about should Max have won, should Lewis have won, did Max do something wrong, should Lewis have changed tyres, right? All of that we're going to discuss, but that's not what this is about. This is about the actual sport itself. It doesn't matter if Max ended up winning or Lewis. All you want to see as a sporting fan is the correct person named as the winner. We don't know who that correct person is yet. Let's be honest, right? And you're probably going to say, what? How can you say that? That's bias. But let's look at it. Let's look at it objectively and just calm it for a minute. 24 hours have passed. Let's calm down. Let's just look at it objectively and dig into who's right, who's wrong, or is it simply impossible to call? It's more about the why it happened, because this could affect things in the future. That the safety car didn't return to the pits at the end of the following lap. Those are some things that we can factually look at. However, Red Bull's defense say that any does not mean all, which is a little bit of wordplay, okay, which to me shows that they're scraping the barrel here. It says that Article 48.13 of the sporting regs state that the message safety car in this lap is a signal that the safety car will enter the pit lane at the end of that lap, which we can agree with. 48.13 will override 48.13, which is a little bit of, again, wordplay. Saying that one rule affects the other is technically true, but again, it's a little bit scraping the barrel. Where they actually have a point to stand on is it says in Article 15.3, this gives the race director overriding authority over the use of the safety car. Right? Now, they're going on to say that even if all the cars had been lapped, 8 in total, of which 5 were allowed to overtake, it would not have changed the outcome of the race. Now, this is where it's a little bit messy, because if the 8 cars were allowed to overtake the safety car and the safety car was allowed to come in following the rules, the race would have ended. So we're going to have to figure out how we ended up here, right? So in qualifying, we can objectively say, you can say, oh, this guy's got a Mercedes out, this guy's a Lewis Hamilton fan. We can objectively say that Red Bull were very, very smart in qualifying, and I like the use of the grey area lines, the tactics. You know how, let's say, when Alonso was driving off the track, he would drive off the track because they knew the FIA wouldn't enforce it. You remember that race? I like the use of grey areas. I'm not against seeing smart stuff. So we can probably agree, let's be honest, that Max Verstappen intentionally flat spotted his tyre. So I'm not going to bitch about that. Fair play. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say cool tactics by Verstappen, gets on pole position. He's on pole position for the must-win race of the championship-defining race. Great stuff, right? Second position, Lewis Hamilton. We then have Lando Norris, Perez. The race begins and Lewis Hamilton gets the better start and he takes the lead. I think we can all agree that was good driving, whether you're a Verstappen fan or not. he has retaken the pole position. So Max Verstappen better in qualifying, Lewis Hamilton has the better start and he gets pole. And this is where the grey area could have been wrong, but I'm going to be fair and let's give Max Verstappen the doubt here. So Lewis Hamilton is driving, he's driving along, and Max Verstappen goes on the inside, he overtakes Lewis Hamilton, correct, and he stays on the track. Therefore, it's a legal move. Now, Mercedes fans, such as myself, might say, look, the way Max Verstappen drove, he pretty much drove in a straight line, forcing Lewis to not take the corner or optionally choose to smash into Verstappen, which is clearly a no-go because he would have lost the championship. Max Verstappen, knowing this, was able to take a little bit more risk. By pulling out and avoiding the crash, he took a corner that he probably shouldn't have taken. He went off the track and he gained an advantage, right? Shall we say that? And Max Verstappen was wronged. If you want to go down this route, Max Verstappen was wronged. He produced a legal maneuver and Lewis Hamilton was not penalised for it. So next, how do we deal with that situation? Well, does that incident, let's be honest, think about this logically, guys, as a Max Verstappen fan or a Lewis Hamilton fan, does that decision from the FIA decide the race by letting Lewis Hamilton keep his lead? I don't think it does. I think it's very, very clear in the next 10 to 15 laps that Max Verstappen is in a slower car. He's on the worst tyre. He's moaning about his tyres and he has not got the pace to catch Lewis Hamilton. So on the flip side, if Lewis Hamilton was told, listen, mate, you cut the corner, that was bullshit, give the pole position back to Verstappen, and that happened, we could argue that Lewis Hamilton would have been quick enough to overtake him, but we don't know that because Max might have driven the drive of his life because it was the championship race. So we can't say that for fact, can we? What we can say is it would have been Max Verstappen first, Lewis Hamilton second. Having seen that and having known that situation, Lewis might have pitted because he was already in second, so he wouldn't have lost track position. And he would have been able to weave his way back through the grid and get back to second. So in a way, you could argue that by the FIA not punishing Lewis Hamilton, he ended up not doing the tyre change that probably cost him the race, if we've been logical about this. So there are two outcomes here. Lewis Hamilton keeps first and he drives on and he then doesn't pit because he doesn't want to give up race position. Or number two, he gives back the position, he has the faster car, he pits, and then come the end of the race, he's probably on slightly better tyres. So the next big moment comes from the first safety car. So previously they'd called up Lewis Hamilton and they say, look mate, if there's a safety car, what tyres do you want? They don't pit and he stays out on the tyres and Max Verstappen has the faster tyres and etc. But we see, what do we see? Just be objective about the facts. We see that no matter what tactics were produced during that match, Lewis Hamilton was faster. Can we agree? The only time Lewis Hamilton was not faster was for those brief few laps where he was on like 40 lap tyres and Max Verstappen was on completely fresh tyres. That was probably the only time that Max Verstappen was quicker than him. So how did he get those fresher tyres? Well, he got the fresher tyres under the two safety cars, right? Now you can say that's luck. You can say that's Red Bull taking advantage of a situation. I agree. You can say it's unfortunate. You can say it sucks that Mercedes didn't pit, but that's not Max Verstappen's fault that happened. Max Verstappen did everything legal and he arrived with newer tyres. Can we all agree? Even if you're a Lewis fan or a Max Verstappen fan or a Lewis hater, we can all agree that come the end of the race, pretty much, give or take a little bit here or there, it was probably the right outcome. Lewis Hamilton was in the lead because he was quicker on the day, but Max Verstappen was catching him and he had the faster tyres and the better tyres, right? And although there'd been a few grey areas here and there, that was roughly what it should have been. Now, where it all goes wrong is the following. What people are saying is this. If Lewis Hamilton would have pitted and he'd have had quicker tyres, he would have been able to defend the Max Verstappen attack on the last lap and therefore be world champion. I agree. I think if Lewis Hamilton would have pitted at some point and been on slightly better tyres, I think he could have defended and won that championship. The issue here is people are jumping to a conclusion that doesn't really exist. The reason it doesn't really exist is because honestly sit down and ask yourself, if Lewis Hamilton gives up track position to get new tyres and Max Verstappen takes the lead and then that crash happens, can you honestly see a scenario where Lewis Hamilton is in second place and they let only a certain amount of cars go? They then pull in the safety car, basically a lap early, and give Lewis Hamilton a flying lap to drive at Max Verstappen and overtake him and win the championship on the very last lap. I cannot see it happening. You might say, well, you'll never know that. You're right, we'll never know it. But honestly, just sit down and hand on heart ask yourself, if Lewis Hamilton had given up track position, he'd have put on the faster tyres and he would have been in second position. The crash happens. Would the FIA have gone on the phone and said, listen, we're not pulling in the cars. Wait, we're pulling in the cars. We're not pulling in the cars. Oh, shit, the safety car's coming in. And then Lewis Hamilton flies off and wins it. No, the race would have ended under safety car conditions. Max Verstappen would have won and Mercedes would have had no complaints. They would have had no complaints because the following, it would have been entirely legal. I think we can all agree that. So if we flip the situation and we do the exact situation with Lewis Hamilton in first position and Max in second, which is literally what happened, if Lewis Hamilton would have won that Grand Prix and he'd have cruised to victory under the safety car, Red Bull could not have had any complaints, could they? Because it would have been entirely legal. And that's the situation. That is literally the situation that happened. So the other point that people make is, well, if Lewis Hamilton again would have pitted earlier or pitted again or pitted under the safety car or whatever, maybe he would have won because he was so far ahead. That's not true though, is it? Because Lewis Hamilton, although you may think Mercedes had awful tactics and should have pitted and should have swapped tyres and done all this and all that, the end result is, even if you believe Mercedes had poor tactics, the actual end result was Lewis Hamilton was 12 seconds in the lead. If Lewis Hamilton had done some insane strategy and got 50 seconds in the lead, and then that crash would have happened, the same scenario would have played out. The cars would have bunched up and he would have lost his lead. Now, I will admit, in the video, I said that Sergio Perez did some dirty driving. Now, yeah, that was tilt. I was just pissed off. Sergio Perez actually drove really, really well, and he defended really brilliantly, and it was great defensive driving, much better than Bottas, the journeyman, can do. Okay, so we hold our hands up there. Now, there has been reports, and I can't confirm this, but there has been reports that Red Bull actually never filled his car up fully. They asked him to just basically pot around the track, and then when it was his turn to go up ahead of Hamilton, he would defend against Hamilton with a much lighter car. And then he was pulled in and retired mysteriously because people have been saying he didn't have enough fuel to finish, and to avoid the penalty of not fueling fully, they pulled him in. Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but let's say it is true. Again, I still think that's smart play. I think that's very, very smart play by Red Bull, and you have to hand it to them and say that was brilliant tactics. I don't know if it's true or not, but even if it were to be true, I think that's fair tactics. I'm not a 10-year-old fanboy that's trying to point the finger and say Max Verstappen did something wrong or Lewis did something better or etc. Because it's not about that. Max Verstappen this race didn't do anything wrong. Max Verstappen followed the letter of the law, right? What went wrong has nothing to do with Max Verstappen. What went wrong was to do with the FIA, which is why people are talking about it. People are talking about the FIA not because they don't want Max Verstappen to be champion or that it was some ungodly, unfair victory. They're saying all of these things because they're not sure what kind of precedent that sets for the sport. If a race bloke on the radio can call in and say, actually, I want the safety car to come in now. I know it's not in the rules, but this would be exciting. What else could he do? Could he say, oh, it's raining a lot, we're not going to pull the cars in, people love a bit of rain action, let's keep the cars out. Oh, actually, we're going to do just for today, for no random reason, we're going to do no tyre swaps. I know the law says that you have to change your tyres once, but I think that people would love to see everybody on really wrecked tyres. So let's just do that because, well, the FIA guy has a leeway, right? That's what people are moaning at. They're not moaning about the result or if Max Verstappen did something poor. They're moaning because the precedent it sets. And I think that's what people aren't understanding in the comments. Because this happens for all different kinds of reasons. Look, Carlos, the Ferrari driver, he almost lost his podium position because the cars that were in front of him, he had to get through, whereas the other cars were cleared. And as a result, he previously had a massive lead and ended up just getting his podium position by about 0.4 seconds, right? So if he'd have lost his position and he'd have lost his pole position, his podium position, he would have had every right to complain and said, look, why did I have to fight through all of this traffic when all the other people cleared? Why weren't my guys cleared? That's the precedent that was set. He fucked with the race and potentially almost ruined the entire race to get the Netflix-style drama finish that he wanted. So look, you can go through all of the comments in the videos and say that I was biased and I was this and I was that. But if you objectively look at the situation, I can say Max Verstappen didn't do anything wrong. Lewis Hamilton didn't do anything wrong. The FIA were the ones that fucked it up, because if the FIA had followed the rules, the race would have literally ended under the safety car, which is why, if you want to have a cry about it in the comments, have a cry about it. But the facts are, Chris Horner, he's ringing up the bloke going, but if you do that, mate, if you follow the rules, we're not going to win. We only need one racing lap. We only need one racing lap. Why do you think he's saying that? Because he knows if they actually follow the rules of the law to the letter, the race will be over. He's basically saying, when he's ringing up and saying, we only need one racing lap, what he's actually saying is, bend the rules or use the flexibility that the rules give you to let us have a chance at winning. That's what he's saying, and those are facts. So, yeah, that's what's happened 24 hours. They've appealed it. Mercedes, it's been denied twice. They're trying to take it to another level. People like Damien Hill have come in and said, does anybody actually want to do the race director job? I've been thinking about it at least twice and then a few more times. Massey has done a poor job and has had a massively difficult task, and it's really not made easier by communications being broadcast live globally. I think it's also completely wrong that either team can get on the radio and try and influence it. I don't like that. So that's what's happened 24 hours since the race. Let me know what you think. I don't honestly think, if you just look at it objectively, I honestly don't think that either racer did anything wrong. It's the FIA, and the FIA have set a dangerous precedent, and that's why people are pissed off. If Max Verstappen, look, put it this way, if that bloke really wanted an even finish, he could have said the following: right, this has been such an unbelievably close race. We're going to stagger the start. Everyone's going to have fresh tyres, and we're going to go at it for 5 laps. The problem with that is, what arbitrary value do you put on it? And this is where people are getting it wrong in the comments. They're saying like, well, he could have done 1 flying lap. He could have given Lewis Hamilton a car's length start. He could have given Lewis Hamilton fresh tyres. All of these things wouldn't have been right either way. It doesn't matter how you spin it, because he would have been making it up on the spot. That's the problem. So people were like, if he wanted a Netflix finish, he should have given Lewis fresh tyres, he should have given Verstappen fresh tyres, and they should have had a 2-lap race. Well, what happens if it was really close after 2 laps and one overtook and then one overtook again and then somebody ended up winning? Do you then say, well, it was so close, we should have had 5 laps? Or if it was only 1 lap, Lewis would have won. They gave him 2 extra laps so Max could win. You could spin hypotheticals around and round until you're blue in the face. That's why rules exist. This is the point I'm getting to. You can't make up scenarios that would have been fair or unfair, because regardless of what situation he would have come up with, it would have been made up on the spot. So that's why rules exist. So the drivers know, the teams know what to follow. Here's the other thing. If Lewis Hamilton would have known what was going to happen, what do you think he would have done? He would have done the exact same thing he just did. What do I mean by that? Well, when he hears that safety car comes in, Lewis Hamilton knows the rules, Mercedes know the rules, and they know that if this car takes a long time to clear, then they'll have to get the lapped cars out of the way. Then the safety car will come in the next lap. They're thinking to themselves, well, if this race follows the rules, we've won, so we don't need to do anything. That's why Mercedes didn't do anything. Now, if they'd have been immediately told, listen, mate, we're actually not going to do what the rules say. We're going to give Verstappen one lap to attack you and we're going to pull the safety car in early. Who knows what would have happened? Their team might have decided, well, we're going to lose if that happens. Absolutely. So we're going to come in for tyres ourselves. We're going to go to P2 and we're going to attack Verstappen on that last lap. But that didn't happen, did it? It was a big kerfuffle. Nobody knew what was actually happening until it was too late, and neither team could make decisions, and it was just thrown at them. That is the point I'm trying to make. That is the problem. Now do you understand why it's not about Max Verstappen and it's not about Lewis Hamilton? It's about the precedent that's been set. You can't just ignore the rules, because we've seen what happens when you ignore the rules. Mercedes make no decisions because in their mind they're thinking, well, shit, if they follow the rules, we've won, so we don't need to do anything. That's why Mercedes didn't do anything. People have been ragging on them in the comments saying, they lost because of poor tactics. No, their tactics were absolutely spot on. They were so spot on, they were 12 seconds clear, and if the bloody race director had have followed the instructions, they also would have won the Grand Prix. So that's what's happened. Those are just literal facts. You can't argue with it. You can't deny it. Max Verstappen is champion, and Max Verstappen did nothing wrong, but Lewis Hamilton should have been champion. Do you see? That's why Lewis Hamilton fans are pissed off, and that's why the people are pissed off at the sport in general, because what would have happened if Carlos would have lost his pole position and have rang up and said, listen, mate, why did you put all those cars in front of me that I had to get through? Why didn't you clear them like the other cars? I've lost my pole position now. That's what I've been racing for my whole career, or my third place, right, etc. You can't just make it up on the fly, otherwise stuff happens. That is why everyone's moulding and mad. It's not that Super Max is the champion. I've had enough championship wins. We've had 7, mate. Yeah, I would have loved Lewis to get the 8th, and I hope he doesn't retire and he goes and gets the 8th. But you could have shook Max Verstappen's hand and said, brilliant driving. But that's not what happened. Also, people have been saying, well, Max was so superior, you know, Lewis had the faster car. Does nobody remember the start of this season? Pretty much, if you were to like be a bit over the top and just to call it easy, they had the faster car in the first half. Lewis had the faster car in the second half, basically. So this idea that, you know, one racer has done some unbelievable drive and the other one has just been shit is not true. Both drivers did really well. So that's what's happened in 24 hours. So stop your salt comments, because that's not what this is. This isn't a 10-year-old fanboy crying that Max Verstappen won. I couldn't really care less. It's about the greater precedent that's been set. So thanks for tuning into The Zone. Leave a comment, leave a like. Yeah, hopefully we grow the channel. Also, somebody said to me, oh, why have you only got 200 subscribers? Because this is a brand new channel and I'm not in the algorithm and I'm a tiny channel. Like, what do you expect, bro? Yeah, I don't have 1 million subs, bro. Does that make my opinion invalid? No. Like, geez, bro.